Greetings, MechWarriors. This is Blackhawk SC. Many of you out there received the Cataphract 3L as a part of the 2016 Loyalty Rewards Program, so I wanted to do a video that'll hopefully give you some ideas of how to run this mech. You'll notice that I haven't mastered the mech yet, but since I'm very familiar with the Cataphracts, I feel okay about making a guide on it earlier than usual. Before I go on, I did a video earlier on the Cataphract 1X, which brings up some general information about the Cataphracts and a couple of builds that I considered for the 1X specifically. The 3L has the same exact hardpoints as the 1X, so any build that I talked about in that video can be done on the 3L as well, with some obvious changes, like adding the MASC. I hope you will watch that video at some point, because I'm going to skip some information here to avoid redundancy. I really wish though that PGI did a new set of hardpoints for this mech. For example, dual right torso ballistics, or added ERPPC quirks. That would have further separated the 3Ls from the other Cataphracts, but this is what we have. Let's first talk about MASC, which is the only difference between the 3L and the 1X. Currently, the CTF-3L is the only heavy mech in the game that can carry it. I've seen some forum posts that question whether or not to take it. In short, yes you should. In fact, if you don't use the MASC, the 3L is inferior to the 1X in almost every way. The most important benefit of the MASC is that you get a huge increase to acceleration and deceleration, which allows you to peek, shoot, dodge return fire, and get back to cover a lot faster. You can imagine when an enemy is trying to return fire and you suddenly accelerate faster than he predicted. He's either going to completely miss or hit a component that he's not trying to aim for. The speed increase is also worth mentioning, but actually it's not the primary benefit. However, it's still worth the tonnage, and I can give you an example to illustrate. Suppose you take an XL280 engine. After speed tweak, your max speed is 69.7 kph. With MASC, it temporarily boosts that top speed to 81.5 kph. This is equivalent to about an XL325, an engine that's 5 tons heavier, but here you only sacrifice 4 tons to equip the MASC Mk4. The difference is even greater if you took a standard engine, with the standard 325 being 8.5 tons heavier than the standard 280. One way to look at it is that the heavier that your engine is, the bigger the boost that you get from the MASC. You do give up some crit slots with the MASC, but the bonuses are worth the cost. Moving on to the builds, I'm first going to bring up a build that probably comes to mind for some people, which is AC-20 and MPLs, or some variation of a ballistic energy brawler. But I'm not going to recommend this build. Of course, this build uses all the quirks and other features of the 3L well. The pulse laser heat gen and ballistic cooldown should give you okay close range DPS, and the MASC will help you run away if you're caught in a bad spot. However, since the middle of this year, the public queue meta has pretty much shifted back to mid-long range. This is due to the popularity of UAC 10 and UAC 5 DACA, GAUSS and ERPPC PPFLD, as well as the continuing viability of Clan Laser Vomit. The nerfing of many of the best IS mechs, like the Black Knight, has also brought clans back on top for the most part. This means more people are taking clans, which in turn means more ranged battles. Finally, the current map rotation, like the new Frozen City, Grim Plexus, Alpine, Canyon, to name a few, favors long to mid-range engagements throughout the majority of the match. There are certainly some maps and some situations that will allow you to do well in this build, but I think it's going to be a challenge to get it to work consistently. In case you really enjoy brawlers, I'd rather recommend the SRM AC-20 Cataphract 2X instead of the 3L. Next, I'm going to talk about a build that I was most excited about running when the 3L was announced. This uses 3 LPLs and an AC-10. I really wanted a build that uses AC-10s because it's a weapon that doesn't see much use for several good reasons that I won't go into detail here. The intention of the build is to do something different while making it viable, and I think it does achieve that goal. I actually experimented with the same build on the 1X before, but I chose not to use it on the chassis because the quad LPL build was just better. In the 3L version, the LPLs benefit from the pulse laser heat gen quirk, and the AC-10 gets a cooldown and range quirk. However, this version just didn't work out quite as well as I wanted, largely because it didn't have the heat efficiency I think a 400 meter range mech should have. On the 1X, the 10% energy heat gen quirk and extra heatsinks help quite a bit. Additionally, the 3L is missing the ballistic velocity quirk that the 1X has. On the 1X, the AC-10 bullet travels 20% faster, which means I can take quick shots with confidence that I can hit the target. On the 3L, I have to spend a little bit more time aiming, and even a fraction of a second makes a difference when enemies are capable of shooting back. Now I'm going to show a brief clip of how the build feels. I'm not going to do a full gameplay demo because it isn't the build that I'm trying to recommend.
Target acquired. New target acquired. Target acquired. New target acquired. New target acquired. Target acquired. New target acquired. Target acquired. New target acquired. New target.
Notice in that game, the MASC enables me to left peek a little bit more safely, even though that's not the ideal side since my weapons are all right mounted. If I can't get back to cover quickly, I'd be much more hesitant to try and peek that side repeatedly. Second, you can also see how I can take multiple AC-10 shots over a short period of time, but that comes at the cost of increased face time. This is one of the reasons why people avoid it. In summary, the build isn't too bad overall and has fun value, but if we want a solid and consistent build, I think this may not be the best choice. The modules that we use on this build are Advanced Seismic, Radar Deprivation, AC-10 Cooldown, and Large Pulse Laser Range. Up next is a version of the Quad LPL build that I did for the 1X. I did a full guide and gameplay demo of the 1X version earlier, so check that out if you want to see how it plays. In my opinion, this is probably going to be the best build you can do on the 3L. I would take this build if any of the following situations apply to you. 1. You're simply looking to master the 3L as fast as possible. 2. If you don't have the 1X, or 3. You have the 1X and you don't mind running the same build in both variants. As a corner peeker, it makes great use of the MASC to avoid return fire. However, in cases where you're not getting shot back and DPS is more important, the 3L is going to have less heat efficiency than the 1X, so there's that trade-off. The modules that I would take are Advanced Seismic, Radar Deprivation, LPL Range, and Cooldown. The final build in this guide is one that I'm currently running on my 3L, which is a triple large laser Gauss. As I mentioned earlier, the meta has shifted back to mid and mid-long range, so this build is more relevant today than it was earlier this year. Because it's more of a glass cannon than a quad LPL build, I consider it to be inferior, but it's still probably the second best build for the variant. The laser Gauss playstyle should be familiar to a lot of people and meshes very well with the enhancements that the MASC provides. Ideally, you're staying at mid to mid-long range, and peek out from the right side of cover, fire off an alpha, and go back to cover. Try not to trade though. If an enemy can anticipate your shot, you should probably pick another position. The idea is to avoid getting shot using your range and MASC, hopefully getting free or nearly free damage, rather than tanking return fire. You can also alternatively use the 2 high-mounted lasers or the 2 lasers and Gauss for some poke damage in case it's too risky to fully expose that low-mounted arm laser. As a side note, you can see that the 3L, like the 1X and 0XP, has 2 energy hardpoints on the right arm, with one being somewhat higher up than the other. But if you only put one energy weapon on that arm, it'll go to the bottom one instead of the top, and that's really disappointing. Hopefully they'll fix it at some point. About MASC usage, when you're peeking, I would use it to accelerate back to cover instead of accelerating forward. This is because the reticle shakes for a moment after you've released the MASC, which can mess up your aim when you move out of cover. Now, I'm sure some of you out there will question the Gauss and Nexel side torso. I'm aware that this is a risk, but in practice, I think the problem is less severe than it seems at first. The Cataphracts CT is so large that usually you'll either die to CT damage, or if your side torso is destroyed, your CT is about to go anyways. But still, you need to pay attention to shielding the right torso as much as possible. Okay, let's get into a demo. Well, in this match we're on the new Terra Therma. It's a new map that was a part of the October patch, October 2016 patch, that added the Cataphract 3L. I really like this new revamped Terra Therma, and it really adds, like the old Terra Therma was almost a kind of a trolley map in some ways, unless it was on Conquest. The focus was just on it was very stale gameplay, and it was always about the center, and like I felt that a lot of players just picked it because people hate they knew that people hated it, and they picked it to kind of like troll the two teams. But I know there's some people who like the map for various reasons, but I think that was a common reason why it was chosen. But anyways, this new Terra Therma retains the heat property, which is I don't really mind the heat at all. Like Caustic Valley and Tourmaline are also very hot, but um, it added a lot more places where engagements can take place. Instead of the center, there's corners where fights can happen in, and it creates a lot of opportunities for teams to flank from the side and rear, in case one team decides to dig into a position. So I think the map is quite well done, and the other thing to note here is this mech is not on the elites yet, so it's no speed tweak, here. No double basics. So if you finish the double basics, the mech will feel even more agile, feel cooler, will run cooler. So we take a left flank, or not a left flank, but a left rotation, like kind of a counter NASCAR. It's a pretty good way of starting off the map in skirmish, actually. So
New target acquired.
and we spot the enemy over D6, E6, D7, E7, that area. Right now they're about. One thing to know about this match is a lot of it ends up taking place. And you'll see, you could take a look at that build. As you saw, there was a ballistic energy, close range Cataphract 3L, and it's the type of build I decided I don't really recommend. The Cataphract, I think, ends up doing very little because of this, how ranged these matches are. You can see we're starting to shoot at targets that are 600 to about 800 meters away, and that's a bit further than where we would like to be engaging in, but you see the team is not moving forward, and we got a really nice looking firing line over at Delta 5, Echo 5, this area over here. So, and our Gauss has a range to do a good amount of damage from here, while we're these longer range mechs are just taking shot after shot over at the enemy position. And so we're sharing a little bit of armor, as you can see, but just this really nice firing line here. Just we don't really need to move out of it. The large lasers are doing about half damage to even maybe a third damage at this range, but it's better than nothing. The generator that comes up behind us, but did waste a shot on it, but I decided not to look at it any further. There's more things to shoot at over at the Echo 7, so we're not going to worry about that generator. You've seen that Gauss do quite a bit of work. Just misjudged that shot. I thought he was going to move forward and accelerate forward, but he stopped and turned back. So I led that shot too much.
New target acquired.
And as we were saying, we're staying here using our range, trying to get free to nearly free damage from these guys.
New target acquired.
And our firing line is still right here, and I think you notice we sometimes are using MASC to accelerate when we want to avoid shots. And that 500 meter range is pretty much where we want to be, so we go ahead and
Heat level critical. New target acquired.
stay pretty much right here and just providing that range fire support. So it's 4-1. I think right now our team is, you can see that our firing line is kind of breaking up now. People are getting more confident in moving closer, so that's what we'll do.
New target acquired.
And now we'll start using our MASC to move forward a little bit faster, keeping up with our team's push.
New target acquired.
And the enemy team is just really stuck over at Delta 7, Echo 7, and they either don't have the range to really return fire in general. They see another brawler build over for the Orion.
New target acquired.
Okay, so we kind of poked a little bit too far, and so here's where the MASC comes in handy. We try to get back to cover as much as possible.
Warning, incoming missile.
And MASC coming in again, we're getting alarmed, so we need to mask our way out of there. If that can be used as a verb.
Acquired. Target acquired.
See, it just really allows you to stop on a dime and like get out of bad situations. Very useful. And I get the supply cache. So not a bad game. One more thing. Just in case you're not a fan of the default pattern and you don't have any of the MC colors unlocked, you can get a pretty decent look by using the basic blue color on the first and second colors and leaving the third color unchanged. The basic blue color costs 3 million C-bills, and this is what it'll look like. Well, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have questions or comments, leave them below and I do reply to them. See you next time.